Welcome to the Delingpod with me, James Delingpole, and this week's guest is, as always, someone I'm delighted to be able to have a chat with. His name is Kurt Zindulka, and you've got two channels.
Yeah.
You've got the Travelling Dukes, which is your kind of roving, world-reporting travel blog.
Excursions, mayhem, all that, yeah.
And then you've got Publick Occurrences, which is really taking off, which is where you do more edgy stuff, edgy political stuff.
Getting into the politics, yep.
Yeah. And you approached me out of the blue, and I commend you for your pushiness. You started off by sending me a gift from the Orient. You sent me some, and I like gifts, by the way. I think they're always good.
Send James more gifts.
Yeah, you sent me some monk's fruit tea.
Yeah, it's this tea from this small little place in China that I just happened to live in.
Yeah.
And we were trying to sell it for a while until we got shut down by the Communist Party.
Right. As you do.
As you do. Yeah.
And so you're obviously American.
That I'm very American, I've been told.
Yeah. Although your surname is Czech.
That's right, yeah.
Right, okay. And you lived for 5 years in China. And so China's changing pretty rapidly, isn't it?
Yeah, it was wild. So after university, I graduated with a degree in English, studying literature.
Oh, you're doomed then.
Exactly. So there was no work.
Let me stop you. I didn't realize you'd done English. Where did you do that?
I did it at a state school in New Jersey.
Right.
Yeah, Montclair State University.
Okay. So you and was that horribly PC when you were there, or was it before that everything went wrong?
So it was like right at the turning point, actually. Right. So I was forced to take a lot of classes like black female writers to fulfill all this stuff.
No.
Right? Yeah. And it was pretty horrendous. My professor hated every single white man in the class. Until I mentioned that I was incredibly poor, then I guess her Marxist side kind of took over.
Right.
And she let me talk a little bit. But yeah, so you had to fulfill all these black writers, women writers, all this stuff just to graduate. So it's like I couldn't even focus on the literature I was really interested in, which was a shame.
That sucks so much. I in my upstairs loo, I've got this very excellent book about by actually a guy who I'm going to have on the podcast at some stage, and he talks about the canon. He was actually talking about the canon of great artists.
So like Harold Bloom type of stuff, right?
Well, I mean, the canon is just the body of widely accepted literature or art, widely accepted as being excellent, the best that humans have achieved. And now there seems to be this new tendency where actually possession of a vagina or skin tone is more important than quality. Yeah.
I really wish I had had I went through university studying literature, and we did not read Chaucer or Milton.
No.
Swear. Yep.
That's so sad.
I know. So I graduated with a literature degree and was delivering pizzas, and I was like,
which is what you're suited for with an English
exactly.
degree. Yeah, okay.
So I took the first job that sent me over to China just to get out of there. And got there, didn't know anything about China. And obviously it was like a culture shock at first, didn't know the language, couldn't even use chopsticks when I first got there.
Right.
But, picked that up slowly, and it was...
By the way, China's a big place. Where did you go?
So I was in this place called Guilin. It's in the mountains of southern China. One of the most beautiful places in the world, actually.
Right.
Lovely, probably awesome place to ride a motorcycle around, right?
Right.
But yeah, so I was teaching English there, and when I first got there, it was a lot more welcoming towards foreigners than it became over the time I was there. And also... At first, you'd see security cams here and there, but they implemented something called the Skynet, which is literally out of Terminator, that word, right, for the global, which is over 20 to 30 million cameras on all the streets of China. So it's like, since the time I was there, it's like you're constantly being watched all the time. And it's just, It was such an oppressive vibe. It was insane.
It's the surveillance state that we're warned about, and it actually exists in China now.
On steroids. Steroids.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you must have felt a bit kind of exposed.
Yeah, well, also, so I was, besides just teaching English, I was also running this news account on this app called WeChat. WeChat is sort of like the everything app for China. So it's Facebook, Messenger, Uber, paying for money. Most people pay with this app called WeChat. They don't even have cash anymore. And also there are news accounts, right? So I ran this account. It was the most popular with foreigners in China. We had a couple 100,000 followers throughout China. And I was constantly aware of being censored by the government. And what they do is if any story gets over 5,000 clicks, then it gets an automatic review by the government. And yeah, I once was posting a story about the Icelandic pirate party.
Yeah.
And it had mentioned something about Panama. And Panama, like 2 or 3 years ago, was one of the most censored words in all of China because of the Panama Papers. Some of Xi Jinping's relatives had some money stored away in Panama. So I couldn't even send out that article because it had the word Panama in it.
Right.
Automatic block. And then, a few months before I left China, there was this massive WeChat purge where tens of thousands of accounts were just completely blacklisted. And what they were doing was using computer algorithms, AI learning, and they went through 5 years of thousands of posts that I had put up, and they found something from 4.5 years ago, and it had mentioned the Dalai Lama, and so they took down my account. And so I was just like, I cannot live in this country anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you communicate? Because presumably not many people speak English, and you don't speak Mandarin, I imagine.
I speak enough Mandarin to get by. Like it's broken. It's pretty bad. I never really studied it, but I can get by.
What? So you learned it ab initio?
There's 2 ways you learn Chinese as a foreigner in China. Either you take a class or you have a Chinese girlfriend. I had a Chinese girlfriend for a couple of years. Yeah, that's how you pick it up. Yeah.
What's it like having a Chinese girlfriend?
She was lovely, man, actually. Like one of the sweetest people I've ever met.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, she actually pretty much saved my life essentially because of this accident I had in China.
Right.
So
you haven't mentioned that. What was the accident?
All right, so I was riding home on my motorcycle. Yep.
Battery's just run out. I'm gonna
Okay.
replace it.
Okay.
Little break there.
Yep.
Okay.
A little beer.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So she saved your life.
Yeah, so about 3.5 years ago, I was riding home on my motorcycle. I love that motorcycle. But I was blindsided by a taxi driver. He ran through a red light. I hit him straight on, flipped over. Bike was completely trashed, completely totaled, and completely messed up my back. I had already had a bad back after working in a factory as a teenager. Different story. But I was basically 2 of my discs completely slipped out. So it was just like pressing up against my nerve endings. So it was basically pure pain. So nerves, it's like electricity. So I was carried to a Chinese hospital. And they put me in the emergency room or whatever, the waiting room essentially all night. The doctors had went home. I was lying there all night. They gave me some ibuprofen because all the morphine was locked up. So I was basically screaming for about 12 hours.
It sounds like my experiences in Wales when I fell into a ha-ha. Do you know what a ha-ha is?
No.
A ha-ha is on Grand Country estates. You divide your lawns from the estate beyond the sort of the pasture land or whatever with this wall. I think it was about a 10-12 foot drop that I fell down. So you have this kind of ditch, and it looks like the pasture land beyond is contiguous with your lawn. Yeah, it gives an optical illusion.
Right.
It keeps the cattle and sheep out of your land. But anyway, I fell into a ha-ha, and I had to go to a Welsh hospital, and it was a similar situation. The Welsh NHS is appalling.
Yeah.
And they weren't giving me any decent painkillers, and it actually hurts when you've broken your leg.
Yeah.
You want painkillers, and all they gave me was paracetamol or ibuprofen. Anyway, so you were in this Chinese hospital. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was actually, I couldn't walk for about a month and a half in this Chinese hospital.
Were you in traction or whatever, or just lying in bed? You were just
Basically, I was in bed. Yeah, I could get up slightly every now and again, but yeah, one of the amazing things was that I was stuck in a room with two other people who had bad backs. One was a 70-year-old Chinese man who sounded like he was basically dying of lung cancer too, right next to me. And they don't provide nurses really for you. They don't provide you food. They barely provide you water. So what the old guy did was he can hire like a private nurse. They call them like IEs or aunties. And luckily I had a Chinese girlfriend who was a saint, and she basically, she washed me. She fed me. She brought me food every single day. Like if I didn't have her, I don't know what the hell would have happened to me.
But did she had a job presumably?
Yeah, she spent all of her free time coming and helping me. It was one of the greatest things, really, of kindness.
Well, what's happened to her?
Well, so it's a combination of things. So in China, there's something called leftover women. Oh, okay. There's a door.
Oh. Yeah. So your Chinese girlfriend and the rescue.
Yeah. So let's just say like what happened to her, right?
Yeah.
So you want to just say like what happened? So what happened to her?
So what happened to her? Yeah.
All right. So I guess it was a combination of a couple things. The first thing was it was kind of like she was my nurse for a while, so a lot of the sex like sort of relationship kind of changed after that, you know.
Yeah.
And then also there's something in China called leftover women. So if you're a woman who's over the age of 28 or so, and you're not married, basically you might be screwed for the rest of your life, never being able to get a husband.
Yeah.
So it was coming to that time for her, and I just wasn't ready to commit to marriage. So she had to move on. It was kind of,
That's
lovely.
Sad.
Yeah, I know,
That's
right?
a sad story.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Because you could have been her ticket out of China. I don't know whether
I know.
Do Chinese women want to get out of China?
Yeah, but it's also very difficult for anyone to get out of China. I have a lot of friends who have Chinese wives, and it takes them years to be able to get them out of the country. It's very restrictive for their travel. And I didn't want to be tied to China anymore like that too.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so how... and she fed you, presumably?
Yeah.
And so is it very, very primitive in a Chinese hospital?
Especially where I was. I wasn't in like a place like Beijing or Shanghai where you have some decent hospitals. I was in a third-tier city. They rank their cities by tiers, their economic levels. So in a third-tier city, it's pretty grim. Pretty grim.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the medical treatment like?
Basically, I would just beg them to give me morphine. That was about all they did for me.
Oh, I see. That was it.
That was
so there was no kind of reconstruction of your shattered spine or whatever they do.
Well, what they did was they put me into an x-ray, right? And they looked at my x-ray and they said, "Whoa, we can't do anything about this. You need to get to America to have surgery," which I still haven't done, hence why I'm sort of limping around still.
You're in a bad way. I mean,
I'm drinking my way through it, James.
People listening to this may not be aware, but there's also a video version of this because you've brought your camera assistant Tom, which is just great. I mean, this is what I should be doing all the time. This is what I should be filming, because I know there was an appetite for visual stuff, and we did that one vidcast with Dick,
right,
which was great.
I loved it. Yeah, it was great.
But really, we should do more. I mean, I think if I want to expand the brand, that's what I need to be thinking of.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So yeah, like. The way I actually got into YouTube was, I had been approached, let's try to get to some more fun stuff besides past loves and Chinese hospitals. I was approached by a friend of mine, a Chinese friend of mine. This is about 4.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And he was connected to some people in the government, and he was going around asking foreigners if you would like to fly to Beijing and meet with the Chinese military, the People's Liberation Army, and you can make millions of dollars.
Sounds legit.
Yeah. I was like, okay, sign me up.
Yeah.
So they flew me up to Beijing.
Yeah.
And I met with these like legitimately People's Liberation Army officials.
Yeah.
Stuck me in a hotel room. And what it turned out to be was they were trying to money launder money from Europe back to China, because there's a bunch of dark Chinese money in Europe and they have a hard time getting it back there. And they want to use it for all their infrastructure projects across Asia in their one belt, one road debt trap diplomacy.
Right.
So I was brought up there and basically strung along for a month. They put me up in a nice hotel. I was just hanging out there. And it all fell through because my American card actually clicked it. So nothing ever came of it.
What do you mean your American card clicked it?
They wanted to transfer millions of dollars through my card.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And for some reason, dopey English teacher, I was like, yeah, let's do it. I could get millions of dollars. So I started coming up with all these plans because they were like, all right, you're going to get all this millions of Chinese RMB as payment, right?
Yeah.
And you can only take about 50 grand out of China per year because of their money flow restrictions, right? So I was coming up with all these like crazy schemes. I was like, all right, let's start selling tea, which is where we sent you the tea. Maybe smuggling gold into Hong Kong. And another one was like, let's start up a YouTube channel.
Right.
Funnel my money. Obviously, still poor as hell, so nothing ever came of it. I got kind of freaked out and I left there. So, but that's actually how I started up the Traveling Dukes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that does sound quite a dispiriting experience that you had in China. I can see why you wouldn't want to linger. So what did you do then?
We left for Vietnam. So we
Nam.
Right. We went to the Nam. All three of us, me, Tom, and Simon were the Traveling Dukes. We packed up all of our worldly possessions, got on a train from China to Vietnam. Like it was like a 30-hour train ride. And we had to cross the border twice at midnight. You can see all this footage. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then we ended up in this nice little beach town called Hoi An, which is just like absolutely lovely after living in grim China for so long.
I bet the food's better.
The food is amazing. Like one of the problems with China, again, is just the food quality. It's like you're constantly getting sick because of the low standards of oils and meats that they use. So they call it la duza, which is like spicy tummy, basically. So you're just,
You've got squits all the time.
Yeah, especially after a late night barbecue.
That's so depressing because obviously the ethnic cuisine that one used to eat as a child in England certainly was the go-to food was Chinese food, and you had things like Peking duck and sweet and sour prawns and sweet and sour pork or whatever. But real Chinese food, I imagine, in mainland China is any way you can get nice food?
So, like, don't get me wrong, like, some of the Chinese food is absolutely amazing. It's just like you're also just taking sort of a gamble on which restaurant you go to, right? So some of this stuff is just brilliant. Like I love like Szechuan food, hot pots. It's probably one of my favorite foods actually.
Okay.
But especially if you're a poor English teacher, you're not always going to the nicest establishments.
I can see that.
Right?
I can see that. Now you did do it the low rent way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That would be.
But Vietnamese food. Oh my God! You get these. Have you ever had a banh mi? It's this. The French brought over baguettes, so they actually have sandwiches. China has no bread. That's worth a damn. But in Vietnam, they have lovely baguettes for like 20 cents everywhere, and they make these beautiful Vietnamese sandwiches. And best coffee in the world. It is one of the nicest places in the world.
I thought that Australia and New Zealand had the world's best coffee. I think New Zealand invented the flat white.
Yeah, it might be better. I don't know.
So are you talking about black coffee or white coffee?
So they do both. The one that's probably the most popular, it's called Cafe Suda. So they use evaporated milk and very strong black coffee. But you could get black too.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
And do you think that was partly the sort of the French heritage when it was French Indochina?
Very much so. There's actually what happened was there was one French missionary monk who brought over one coffee tree to Vietnam, and that's where the whole industry came from, actually.
It's actually an argument in favor of globalization, isn't it? Or colonialism, certainly. That I once traveled through Africa, and I traveled through the Central African Republic and Zaire, as it then was, now Democratic Republic of Congo, I think. And you went through these kind of fading colonial towns where you couldn't get much meat that wasn't kind of monkey or elephant or disgusting, from fly-blown markets. It was all pretty primitive. But all these towns would still have a patisserie selling really, really good French cakes.
Yeah.
So the French, I don't think they were quite as enlightened as the British were. I think
No.
If you had to be a colony of any country, Britain
It'd be
was
Britain, without question.
We gave the railway systems and the legal system, and they're always pretty well run, aren't they?
Yeah.
Ex-British colonies. French are pretty bad. Belgium, basket cases. Portuguese, even worse.
But at least the French did give some people some nice, food tips. Anyway.
Yeah, nice food tips. Well done, French, for making Vietnam.
Yeah, that's right.
The top tourist destination it is today.
Yeah, it's amazing there. The people are lovely. It's some of the most beautiful scenery. So we started up this travel channel, just traveling all over Vietnam, and it's just some of the most beautiful places you could ever go.
I'm going to have to look at your travel channel of Vietnam, because I've got this fantasy about buying somewhere in Vietnam one day. Although Vietnam is still a communist state or not?
So it is definitely, and they opened up their markets in the late 80s. So that's when Vietnam actually started getting up there economically. They were almost destitute in the 80s and prior to that. But now it's up and coming. There's a lot of money flowing around, but it is still run by the Communist Party. And they are cracking down on Facebook now, which is a worrying sign. So censorship might be coming to Vietnam too.
Oh, okay. So you don't feel that it's in that transitional phase where it's going to become essentially Western free market stuff?
Well, so here's the thing, right? So Trump is doing this whole trade war with China right now,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And tons of factories are dropping their operations in China and moving them to northern Vietnam. So this is the question, right? So in the 90s, we said, should we let China into the WTO? A lot of people said, yes, if you add these industries, the money will make them less communist. It really just went into the Communist Party's pockets and basically funded their surveillance state. So I don't know what's going to happen to Vietnam. Hopefully they become more westernized, because they hate China. So hopefully they side with us. Going around as an American in Vietnam, especially after the Vietnamese War, they love me. They're like America #1 because they're getting rich off us, and they can't stand the Chinese.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think we in the West are very ill-informed about China. I think we're probably aware that the economy is growing pretty fast, but I don't think many people are really clued up about the new regime and about where the authoritarian direction it's heading, and possibly also its threat to the West. I mean, presumably economically, the way it's buying up Africa, for example, and buying up South America, buying up the resources, it's almost makes me think of maybe Japan in the run up to the Second World War. There's something about its ambitions which we should perhaps worry about. Am I right?
Well, so this is one of the reasons why I really support Donald Trump, is because he's the first president of my lifetime to ever try to do anything to compete with China and actually try to stick it to him. So China is probably the most evil government in the world, in my estimation. They have 1 million Muslims locked up in internment camps in the western region of Xinjiang. They torture and organ harvest people from Falun Gong, which is basically just like a Tai Chi religious movement. But because any religion in China is a threat to the Communist Party, they're locked up. They harvest their organs because they don't have enough organ donors. It's outrageous. What they're doing in Hong Kong, locking up students just for asking for freedom of speech and be able to select their own leaders. And what they do to the West as far as stealing our
Technology.
intellectual
IP.
property. Yeah. I mean, there's estimates that it's anywhere from $200 to $600 billion per year that they steal from the West, because they don't invent anything. They just get our stuff and copy it and print it out in a little factory. But I will say this as a silver lining: I think their economy is in very big trouble, especially with the trade war. They have a housing crisis because the government just builds houses, right?
Right.
Just to give people construction jobs.
Right.
But these houses are empty. You have whole cities that are just empty, built with cheap Chinese cement that's crumbling. And and also an aging population. One of their big problems is they're getting old before they're getting rich. So their welfare system is not, they don't even have that much of a welfare system, but they're not going to be able to support the elderly population because they had the one child policy. There's not enough young kids. And also, like, so I think there is hope that a lot of this will crumble. I think they're being aggressive now because they can, but in 10, 20 years, I feel like it could all go south.
But presumably there's going to be a sort of sweet spot, although that's not probably not the right phrase under the circumstance, where they will feel strong enough militarily to maybe have a pop. I mean, there are people who say to me that war with China is inevitable. I mean, I hope that's not the case. And if it's not a shooting war, it's going to be a really nasty trade war. Somebody said to me the other day that they thought that the Chinese have the power, for example, to collapse the Australian economy, and that they are so heavily invested in the West. I mean, in all the tech companies, for example, that all they need to do to collapse the Western economies is to start withdrawing their funds or stop putting more money into these.
Yeah, but that would just, like, their economic growth rates, which are all fake, by the way.
Yeah.
They've been saying over 6.7% for a decade. It's all crap. Any economic numbers you see out of China are fake. I don't buy that, and I think their economy is going down. They need our economy far more than we need them. Right. So, like, if they start actually actively doing these measures, you're going to see more companies fly out of China and go to India or Vietnam, and then it's just going to further collapse their own economy. I don't think they have as much leg to stand on in the trade war. So we have to be as aggressive as possible and just take it to them, because they've got nothing to stand on, I think.
Interesting, because if you spoke to any American liberal, they would say warmonger Trump trying to create this creating tension with the Chinese. All they want to do is have a better Western life, a better standard of living, and here he is just putting a massive fly in the ointment.
Trump is like, if you were really worried about a war with the Chinese, I'd say it'd be legitimate under someone like Obama, who can't enforce red lines in Syria or lets Russia invade other countries, right? Yeah. But I don't, like, one of the best moments I think Trump ever had was when Xi Jinping was staying at Trump's estate called Mar-a-Lago. Yeah. And they were having, I think it was like chocolate ice cream or chocolate cake. And as they were eating chocolate cake, somebody whispered in Trump's ear, and he got the go-ahead to drop the mother of all bombs. And he didn't even say anything to Xi Jinping at the time. But it's like, as he was sitting there with him, he's dropping one of the biggest bombs on a Taliban mountain. And it's like, he's got the idea. You've got to show strength to these communist thugs. It's not the Chinese people. It's this mafia group that controls their government. And we've got to be strong with them. That's the only option.
You mean, what was it called? It was the mother of all bombs, wasn't it?
Moab, right? Yeah, the mother of all bombs.
And I see. And he chose that moment deliberately?
That specific moment, eating chocolate cake with the Chinese dictator.
Do you think he timed it that deliberately?
He's all about timing. He's all about image. This is what he's doing. I don't know. I think that was very well timed.
Oh, why haven't I met Donald yet? I just feel the meeting is so overdue. And I just thought with the Breitbart connection that maybe I'd get an audience.
I've gotten pretty close. So when we were in Vietnam, he actually came. We lucked out, right? Yeah. So he met Kim Jong-un in Hanoi. So we packed up all our stuff and flew up to Hanoi. And it was wild. We were like 10 feet away from Trump and Kim Jong-un. Like when we were first got in there, we had to go to some camera equipment shop on the other side of town. Yeah. We were flying up there in a taxi, and then all of a sudden everything shut down, and it was Kim Jong-un's motorcade that blocked us off, and that was like 30 seconds into getting there. And I don't know if this is one of my favorite rumors about Kim Jong-un is that he travels with 2 Mercedes. One is for him, and the other is actually his toilet car. So because they need to inspect.
That's right. What was that?
The light.
Oh, that's not all right, is it? That's
I'll do it for a second and we've messed up.
Yeah, exactly. When the
Tom.
when the cameraman goes away, this by the way is why one of the reasons why I haven't got the Delingpod film channel, because it involves so much of the stuff I really hate, like organization, tinkering with stuff. I just want to be the talent and just sit in front of the camera and talk shit. I don't want any of the.
That's why I have
techie.
Tom.
Well, I need a Tom.
Yeah.
I tell you what. I tell you so what. When I'm rich, and it won't be long now, I'm sure. God is smiling on me. I'm sure he will bring me money. I'm going to have a Tom, and I'm just going to film my podcast. I'm just going to swan around, talking to interesting people. I think it's got to be good, hasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
But it's very interesting talking to you. You are you've just gone out there and done your shit. You've just gone out there and with Tom, and you like to mix it up with people, and you like to
Well, yeah. So we actually first met in person at a Brexit rally in London, right?
We did, and well done for spotting that, by the way. I think the Brexit Party is the coming thing.
Yeah.
The way the Conservative Party is going right now, I think
It's in shambles.
that
As an outsider, but it looks horrendous to me.
can they even recover?
I don't think so. Who's like maybe the only person I could see is Jacob Rees-Mogg, but that's about
So
it.
Jacob won't do it.
Yeah.
Jacob won't do it. Priti Patel, who I think would be fantastic, absolutely dreamboat. She's not standing. Steve Baker might stand. I think everyone says Boris is the only hope, but after what he said about climate change and stuff, he's borrowing the Greens.
It's too wishy-washy.
It's too wishy-washy. But more than that, it's fundamentally anti-conservative. What he's doing. You cannot buy into the UNFCCC. You can't buy into the United Nations climate change nonsense and be a conservative, because they are inimical.
I know.
Because modern environmentalism is basically a form of socialism wearing the mantle of environmental care.
Watermelons, man. I know.
Watermelons, yeah.
I was in Wales, man. We went camping, and we went to, I can't remember the name of the place. Sorry.
Well, you couldn't pronounce it even if you could.
Yeah, that's right. But it was one of the most beautiful places in all of Wales. And I looked out into the ocean, and there's hundreds of these disgusting looking windmills. And I was like, what the hell are you doing in your country?
Yeah.
And that was a great thing Trump did too. He was like, windmills are dumb.
Yes, he did. It's one of the many reasons I love the Donald.
Yeah.
That he hates windmills. He hates wind turbines.
But yeah, so we met at this Brexit rally, right? And
We did.
And you were thinking about going up and filming this Tommy Robinson thing, but you don't have a Tom, so you actually sent us up there.
That's
you
that's
gave us
right.
the suggestion of going up there, right?
Yeah, and you embarrassed me slightly because
A little
because,
bit.
because the next so I think I said something to you like look guys, if you get some interesting footage, we might use it, and I think that you took that as a cue to go and represent Breitbart, which you can't. I don't mind.
I get it.
I think you're a very sweet guy, and you mean well. I know, but you ended up getting milkshaked,
Yep.
and so momentum, the hard left, Jeremy Corbyn, who are always looking out for any example of conservatives being humiliated and stuff, and they said Breitbart reporter gets milkshake. So then I heard from my bosses, who is this guy? Why? He's not Breitbart. How is this? Anyway, it was fine. I'm very relaxed about these sort of things, but I can see why Breitbart, the organisation, might have been.
Yeah, I understand too.
But-
Dickhead YouTuber move. But I did get milkshakes, so I am in a select crew.
Yeah.
Like there's Nigel Farage, Sargon of Akkad, Tommy Robinson, and me.
Yeah.
some dude. who just showed up in this country a few weeks ago.
And so, how was the Tommy Robinson rally?
You know, it was interesting. Like, we went around for about an hour or so, like, interviewing all the Tommy Robinson supporters. It was one of the poorest places in all of Manchester. Like, these people had nothing. And they were just saying, you know, Tommy gives us hope. You know, he's the only one that actually talks about us, you know. And on the other side of the police aisle, there were all these upper class white people basically screaming that these poor working people are Nazis or fascists.
Yeah.
And it just really, I just feel they're just virtue signaling, but they're attacking the poorest people that they claim to represent. It's so odd, you know. And it was interesting. And then we walked across to the anti-Tommy side, and within 2 minutes had a McDonald's vanilla milkshake thrown on me. On my only suit, man. I'm a poor English teacher from Knob.
So these were Antifa types, presumably.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about, were you there when that massive mob of Islamists descended on the rally and started throwing stones? Or was that a different rally?
No, that was a couple days before us, actually. Yeah.
That was ugly.
Yeah, it was ugly. It was ugly.
And the police seemed to be kind of helping the bad guys.
I don't get it. Like, it was so shocking. Like, after I got milkshaked, right?
Yeah.
Such a weird, like, verb. The policeman came up to me and he was like, "Get out of here. You're causing a disturbance. You're just inflaming the situation." I'm like, dude, I didn't even say an opinion. I just asked these what they were thinking, and I get hit with a milkshake, and I'm the one inflaming the situation.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the police in this country doing?
Well, that's an interesting question. You can tell me, because you've seen communist China and you've seen the West. Tell me the differences between the kind of the forms of political correctness that they impose on us.
Well, so in China, and to a lesser extent Vietnam, basically you could speak very openly about a lot of like social issues, right? Like, you could share your thoughts on a lot of things, right? As long as you don't talk about the Communist Party, as long as you don't insult any of the leadership, you're pretty much fine. If you do speak out against, you might end up in a prison and disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
Over here, it's a lot more like you just can't speak openly. I felt so much more free sharing my opinions over in Asia than just a few weeks back here.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Because it's like, one, there's a lot less white people around that can understand me, I guess.
Yeah.
But over there, it's like people will hear you out a lot more and won't just say, "Oh, you're a horrible person for believing this." Here, it's like people are calling me like a racist, fascist, and it's like, dude, I'm an American libertarian.
Yeah.
Pretty much the opposite of but yeah. So I think it's a pretty stark difference, and also just like dating culture. Over there, it's like over here you have to you got to worry about stepping on eggshells. Don't mention this topic in front of a woman you don't know that well, right? You don't want to share your whole political thesis too early before they, you know what
funny.
I mean?
I like to think of this podcast as a bastion of old school values, and I talk about the world as it was when I was growing up, which seems reasonable. I have a sort of an old fashioned view about men and women. I think we're different.
So do I, actually. Yeah. And
probably so do most people, actually, when you scratch the surface.
And those roles are sort of a lot more defined in places in Asia. They're a lot more conservative in that regard. So it's like there are specific just sort of gender norms, especially in public. Like, if you go like behind the scenes in any Chinese relationship, the woman's still running the show, right? But in public, they're not going to like disgrace their man by shitting on him.
Yeah.
But over here, it's like they feel empowered, and it gives them some, I don't know, righteous anger because they're angry at their dad, I guess. I don't know.
I think one of the things that bothers me is that girls have now been culturally brainwashed into thinking that for example, if a man makes if they have drunk sex, that it is now perfectly legitimate for them to decide the morning after that actually no, on second thoughts they didn't like it, and therefore they were raped.
Exactly.
Whereas in the old days, we used to get drunk because obviously courting is quite, when you're young, you don't really know what you're doing. And it's difficult to ask a girl out, or difficult if you're a girl, I imagine, to, you know, you're out on the pool too. And so you get drunk to sort of ease the process. And yeah, it can be a bit messy, and sometimes you regret it afterwards, but it ain't rape. That's not,
right.
That's not, you know, rape is for me is a much nastier and
exactly.
premeditated thing.
Well, and it's like you see all these studies that millennials are having so much less sex than the generations previous. Yeah. I imagine it's because people are afraid of having drunk sex and ruining your life forever. It's like in the 70s, you could just get hammered and a lot more sex was going on.
Can I just say,
right?
as an older person, I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that people, you may have your youth, and you may have your beauty, and you may have years ahead of you, but you can't have sex.
Yeah, you got us, man.
Yeah. That's so you all become incels. That's what.
Yeah, well, not if you move to Asia.
Okay, yeah. But let me give you another example of this.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of that series, which is on Sky, HBO. Recently, the Chernobyl series.
Oh, I've been meaning to watch it. I haven't had a chance yet.
It's really good. And some stupid girl on Twitter, you know, not many followers, but just representative, I think, of the youth, the kind of brainwashed, stupid youth, said, you know, why weren't there more people of colour in the casting? Well, you know, in 1986 in the Ukraine,
yeah.
How many people of colour were there? I think probably less than 0.001%. There probably wouldn't have been a single person of colour in the entirety of that region of the Ukraine, or indeed in Moscow. Probably they might have visiting people being indoctrinated from African countries, exactly. You know, studying how to become good communists. But apart from that, I thought what grated with me was her assumption that people of colour, as she called them, have a right to be represented in historical periods where they would not have existed. That somehow that this is only fair and just. And it's not fair and just. It's wrong. It's historically inaccurate, and it's insulting to the viewer.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I remember they said the same thing about Dunkirk. What?
They did.
What are you talking about?
They.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the thing. This is why we fight the culture wars, because there is so much stupid around.
Yeah.
And if we don't speak out against the stupid, because in a way, what they're doing when this is one of my friend Douglas Murray's lines on this. It's actually an act of aggression. What they are saying because the BBC, for example, now has this policy whereby a certain percentage of BAME, as they call them, and a certain amount of women are required to be in every single drama, regardless of the historical facts, which is why, for example, we had Les Miserables with a black Inspector Javert. Well, 1830s France, there would not have been a black Inspector Javert. And actually, if you're going to go to the trouble of recreating the period, and you're going to make sure that in each shot the streets are cobbled, and there are going to be no parking meters or wind turbines or whatever, if you're going to go to that trouble on period detail, why blow it just because you want to make a point about race relations? And it seems to me, getting back to Douglas's point, that it's not merely a kind of a neutral political position. It's actually an act of aggression against the viewer, challenging the viewer to be upset. And when you get upset by it, you're a racist. They want to make you feel like you're a racist.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's why everyone's turning away from these old media sources. They are. Right? So it's like, let's burn them all to the ground. Like, just cut the cable. Don't watch television anymore. Don't support them. Like, just find your stuff on the internet. If you want to watch a show, just rip it on like Pirate Bay or something.
This is why.
Don't give it money.
This is why I feel very much at the bleeding edge of the modern world, having you here, because you are going out there and doing this stuff.
Yeah, so did the Tommy Robinson rally, Brexit rally since we were here, Trump and Kim in Vietnam, and we literally just came from 2 straight days of Trump protests in London.
Right, and how were they?
You know, well, the first thing I gotta say is the blimp was pathetic.
I've seen the blimp. I saw it on the previous Trump visit, and I was struck by how comically small it is.
Yeah.
Compared to how you would expect it to be.
And it was too windy, so they got it about 10 feet off the ground. That was it, which I loved. It was just like an act of God. And then later, when the big protest came, it was raining pretty hard on all those leftists. It was pretty wild. And yeah, I had water thrown on me. That was probably the worst thing, because I tried to take a picture with a guy wearing a MAGA hat, and they threw water on me, called me an incel, like loser. They said, "Oh, look at this guy. He's obviously the superior race." And, and we saw some people get attacked. We interviewed a bunch of people who were walking around.
Who was being attacked?
Anyone wearing a MAGA hat. So, basically, people would just come up and rip their hats off. Like, one guy told me they took his hat off and threw it in some horse crap. And got pushed around a bunch. But we went on both sides. We went kind of incognito onto the left.
Well, you look like a leftist.
Oh yeah.
Or you could pass anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I on the Monday of the visit, I went on Sky News and to commentate on the arrival of Air Force One helicopter, and so I had a sort of ringside seat by Buckingham Palace, and I wore a Trump. It wasn't the red MAGA hat; it was a black MAGA hat. I couldn't get hold of a red one. It was very hard.
Yeah, we tried too. It didn't deliver in time.
And the Sky people refused to let me wear my
You're kidding.
Trump. No, and they actually used the phrase "safe space." They said that this would invade somebody's safe space. And that's how the left thinks now. They think that wearing a red hat with the slogan celebrating American greatness, which is surely a good thing. American greatness has brought good things to the world. One would think. I think America on balance is good rather than bad. It's the leader of the free world. Yeah. And yet it's now considered to be an act of violence to wear one. And we know it's considered an act of violence because they feel perfectly able to attack anybody violently for wearing one because they think it's a reasonable quid pro quo. Whereas I'd say, no, actually, it's a hat.
Yeah, it's a hat. And it's just this, they want to create this. I think what it really is about, getting back to the Douglas point, is they want to provoke you. They want to push you, and then as soon as you push back, look at this Nazi here wearing the red hat. He pushed me. Like they're trying to push you into a corner so you lash out, so that you look like what they really are, which is fascists, right?
Yes.
The left are fascists, not us,
they are.
Right? People wearing a red hat, that's not an aggressive act. But screaming at people and attacking people for wearing a hat, that's a fascist act.
Physically assaulting them with milkshake, which requires at the very least a dry cleaning bill.
Yeah.
And but also is quite upsetting being physically attacked. And it's interesting the way they rationalize it. They sort of make out that like it's only a milkshake and you should take it on the chin or on the shoulder or wherever it is,
on my suit jacket.
Yeah, you should take it on the chin, and that when you react, you are the bad one because you are not being able to take a joke.
Yeah,
that's how they view it, or that's how they pretend to view it.
Well, and that's why when I got a milkshake thrown on me, I had to turn around with a big ass smile on my face and said, "The tolerant left." Yeah. The tolerant left.
Yeah.
And don't fight back. Like, don't fight back physically. Just fight back on constantly saying the truth. You speak back. You fight back with words. You fight back through making these videos, through making these podcasts. Like, fight back culturally. Don't fight back. Don't let them win by goading you into a fight. Right.
Well, let me ask you, because I know that we've got the memes. We've got
the left can't meme.
Left can't meme.
Yeah.
We've got the kids on 4chan who are capable of tracking down a flag, even though all you can see is just the flag fluttering. Two airplanes going at converging, and they somehow found that flag.
And they found Shia LaBeouf in like Iceland or whatever.
They found Shia LaBeouf. This is extraordinary. So we've got some real talent. We've got the wit. We've got a lot of the youth. I think we've got the culture. the left used to have the culture. Now we've got the culture, but they're now trying to close us down by saying, well, you can't have the culture because we control the media by which you reach the culture.
Well, so it's not
Silicon
about
Valley.
the media, actually. As far as Trump's reelection chances, I don't see any Democrat that could beat him right now.
He's
his biggest enemy are the tech companies. So the culture isn't going to be fought on the BBC. The culture is being fought on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
That's what I mean.
So he's got to fight back against these tech companies. I guess you go after them on publishing rights. That's what a lot of people are saying.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't take on these tech companies, he doesn't stand a chance because everything is going to be algorithmically decided, right?
Because interestingly, that's basically why Tommy Robinson didn't get his seat in the European Parliament. I'm sure that had people had access to, well, having said that, I'm not sure how many poor white working class people hang out on the internet, but I think it definitely was a factor, wasn't it?
It's growing, right? It's growing. The Trump movement is definitely helping that. His campaign was brilliant as far as using Facebook, where Clinton wasn't using it at all, basically. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. But now it's do you know who Scott Adams is?
Yeah.
Yeah, big fan of his. He's suggested that Trump might be actually the last human president because every other president after him will just basically repeat whatever is algorithmically pleasing to enough people to get the most amount of votes.
Right.
But Trump is just going off the fly, saying whatever the hell he wants, using just his marketing skills. So I don't know. He's got to take on these tech companies or he doesn't stand a chance.
And do you think he will?
I don't know. It's looking like the DOJ is going to file some antitrust files against Google, Amazon. We'll see. I don't know if the government is powerful enough to do it. I don't know how you split up an algorithm. It's a lot easier to break up a railway company 100 years ago than it is to split a website algorithm. So I don't know how you do it. The people in government don't know how the hell to do it either.
Does he want to win in 2020 or not?
I think I think at first he probably would have wanted to just leave after 4 years, say, I was so great in these 4 years that I don't need to do it anymore, right? But now that he's been blocked at every turn, he needs the extra 4 years to solidify any sort of legacy, right?
And also, not just a legacy, but he needs to reveal the true corruption of the Obama regime.
That's right.
I mean, the deep state was so dangerous and anti-democratic and far left, actually.
And this is one of the biggest things that reveals the media's bias. He says he's going to release the documents of how all of this spying on his campaign started off. When did the New York Times not want to hear what the CIA is up to?
Yeah.
Right? What the hell is going on here? They're obviously showing their colors.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. And we've got to get rid of these people in Washington. I don't know what happens to Brennan and Clapper, but I would like a prison cell, to be honest with you, or at least a hearing. It's treason to me.
Yeah. I think so many of Obama's appointees were extremely dodgy. And not to mention crooked Hillary.
Yeah.
Who really should be behind bars, shouldn't she?
Exactly. I mean, all of them, really. There was that submarine kid who took a selfie on a submarine and got done for years. He went into prison because he was releasing classified information, technically. What the hell happened to Hillary Clinton, who released hundreds of documents on Anthony Weiner's laptop, sharing classified information? Same thing. But James Comey says she didn't have intent. There's no intent in the statute. She didn't need to have intent. So it's just two-sided justice again. So Trump's got to stick around as long as possible. We need him.
Well, I think, bearing in mind your bad back, I ought to take you to the pub now for a pint.
Sounds lovely.
To heal your. I'm surprised you're not on morphine. Actually, is beer and whiskey really good enough for bad back?
Not really, but
you're a brave boy.
Yeah, tough it out.
Back pain is horrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's fantastic. Thank you, Kurt Zindulka, for appearing on the Delingpod and for bringing your cameraman Tom. And I hope lots of people follow your channels, Traveling Dukes and Publick. Why is it called Publick Occurrences, by the way?
Oh, yeah. So Publick Occurrences was the oldest newspaper in America, the first one. It ran for one issue before it was censored by the British Colonial Authority. because he
Not my
ran
fault.
some dodgy stuff about the sexual proclivities of a French king.
Right.
So he got shut down. So I'm bringing back the first censored newspaper. That's my YouTube channel. Please subscribe and support me on Patreon if you want to buy me a pack of smokes or something,
no,
man.
I agree. Buy him some smokes and buy him some painkillers. I think he's earned it. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
man.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure.
Okay. Bye.